from the very beginning with Photo Jojo and also with what you're doing now, it seems like, and again, I think this, I don't know if this ties back to some of the lessons that you learned from Seth, or if this is just, how much of this is just who you are as a personality and kind of injecting it into your to your brand. But I've used Photo Jojo in my class as a case study around like, and I call them delighter features, but it's like throughout the product, you're using copy in a way that is, and I don't want to use the word cute because I think it diminishes maybe or understates what it is that you were actually doing. But the product has a personality, and it's throughout. And you had, you would ship little dinosaurs with the first order. And I remember Flickr with like thousands of these little dinosaurs on Flickr, and the cookie smell and in the box and all of that kind of stuff. How do you think about, I guess, injecting personality and using brand? Because it seemed like it was a huge force multiplier for you from a retention perspective and word of mouth. And is that, I guess I just have a lot of, like, how do you think about that? Because is that you, and that's just, I can't help but be that way? Or is that strategic, or both? How do you think about that stuff?
Yeah, there's so many interesting things there. It's something I'm really passionate about. It's definitely something, you mentioned Seth, it's definitely something that I think he also helped spark. He talks a lot about being remarkable and how it's one of the most important ways that you can market and sell, just like making a better product, a more interesting product. Yeah. And when you look at the web today, when you look at, apps today, there's so much sameness. Like if you go back a decade or 2 decades, there's an incredible diversity of designs, of interactions, of all sorts of like playful things. The web was really fun and quirky and weird 20 years ago. And now it's all like very, very homogenous, which is
the dribblization of design. If you could call it, right?
And it's a little sad, but it's also a huge opportunity. So it's kind of great because if you're willing to actually go out and do something different, it's so easy to get noticed because you don't have to be that different to stand out today. And I think, if you try to make something that looks like everyone else because you think that's what you're supposed to do, it's just forgettable because there's so many things like it. And if you make something different that's going to please not everybody, because if you try to please everybody, you please nobody. If you try to please yourself, if you try to make something fun for yourself and your friends, you'll find that so many people are excited about that weird, quirky thing and they want to tell friends about it. And I think that's where the ROI comes in, because I don't think we spent a single dollar on Facebook ads or Google ads or any of that stuff. We didn't pay into that like ad, hegemony, monopoly, duopoly, whatever. We just made stuff that was weird and interesting and worth talking about. And that was not only cheaper to access people, it was just so much more fun to do it that way. Like if you spend your life optimizing Google AdWords, your life is a spreadsheet. If you spend your life trying to find like quirky, weird design elements and ways to make people smile, then you get videos of people smiling and photos of them smiling, and they're excited to see you when they meet you. It's just a whole different world. So yeah, that's always what I've been about. It's definitely something that I want to work into Sudowrite, what we're doing now, even more and more. And I don't think we do it enough yet, but I think we're going to do it. We're going to do more of it.
Is it just, I would imagine that it's to a certain degree, it's a muscle that you just have to work with practice. But I mean, either early on or even today, are there, I don't want to use the word frameworks, but are there tools or techniques or things that you do to make that more likely to happen? Like as an example, like I used to tell my students, when you're doing like your UX audit or whatever it is, like look at every single page on the site, hold up this version of like if your product was a person, who would they be like? Would they sound like? We do that exercise, and then look at every single page on the site and ask yourself, like, how could I make that 10% cooler or weirder or whatever it is? Like, is there anything similar that you've kind of leveraged to kind of make this happen more consistently? Because you're very good at it.
Yeah, totally. I think that going to the edge is the way that I try to think about it. So you don't have, it's okay when you're brainstorming. It's okay when you're just trying to be creative to think of bad ideas. And one of the most easy and like methodical ways to think of bad ideas is going to extremes. So if you're thinking about any type of problem on any vector you're thinking of, you can think about what's the most extreme on either end of the spectrum that you can go to with this, whether or not it's ridiculous, whether or not it's possible, just think about it. And as you think about it, you start to think about other extremes. And as you think about these like absurd things, usually you come up with something that actually could work, even though it's kind of extreme, or something that's like just back from the brink of being absurd, that actually would work and would get a lot of attention. So I like to do that.
Yeah, that's really cool. I think that's actually, wasn't that a Godinism as well? He talked about like Hummer and Mini Cooper at the time as being like the small, you can go the smallest, you can go the biggest. Like it almost doesn't matter what edge you choose, just pick one and go all the way.
Yeah. Just don't be in the middle.
Yeah. You seem to have a gift too around copy and voice. Are there any approaches that you use there? Because I mean, that's the cheapest way to do brand, I think, for a startup, especially is through copy, right? And to kind of give it a personality. How do you think about that?
Yeah. So I think it's similar in a lot of ways. I think you have to write for yourself. And that's true when you're writing fiction too. I think you have to write for yourself. If you're trying to write for, like B2B SaaS customers or whatever, you're going to write really boring copy because it's going to look like everyone else's copy because you're afraid. You're going to try to make it seem like as inoffensive as possible. And that's the death knell for any copy. And I think it takes courage to make something that might make people look funny at it. It might make people a little confused potentially too. It takes courage, but I think it's so much scarier to be forgotten, to be forgettable, to be ignored, than it is to, make people a little confused or upset. But yeah, just write for yourself. I think that's the easiest thing for me. And it's hard to get into, but yeah, it takes some courage to put out some stuff like that.